What do you want from me?
Look at those eyes. They call her the woman with the killer gaze, a queen who commanded the screen in the 1952 masterpiece, High Noon. When Katy Jurado stepped into the frame as Helen Ramirez, she didn't just play a role, she shattered every tired stereotype Hollywood had ever built for Latin women. She was pure power. Pure fire. But let's be real for a second, because what we saw on the red carpet was a flat-out lie. It's absolutely chilling to think that while she was making history as the first Latin actress to win a Golden Globe and grace the Oscars, her private reality was a straight-up horror movie. Can you even fathom the kind of betrayal where the man who's supposed to love you, Ernest Borgnine, actually wraps his hands around your throat until the world goes black? Right inside your own mansion. And that's not even the darkest part. Talk about a total shock to the system. Behind the glamour, Katy was involved in a mystical, bone-chilling blood oath with the legendary Marlon Brando. I mean, are we serious right now? We're talking about actual blood, a pact that bound their souls together until the very end. How did she survive the hell of a marriage that felt like a prison? And what was the real price she paid for that seat at the Hollywood table? Fasten your seatbelts, because today, we are peeling back that perfect, diamond-encrusted mask. By the time we reach the end, you'll discover a truth so heartbreaking, it will change the way you look at her films forever. Trust me, this one is going to leave you absolutely speechless. But before we get into the heavy stuff, I have to show you a side of Katy that really makes her one of us. You see the steel woman on screen, but at home? She was the ultimate dog mom. Katy was absolutely obsessed with her chihuahuas. She didn't just love them, she treated them like royalty, even dressing them in tiny, custom-made traditional Mexican outfits for the holidays. It's a side of her that feels so warm and relatable, doesn't it? I know many of you watching probably feel the same way about your own furry companions. If your pet is the real boss of your home, drop a dog emoji or a heart emoji in the comments. I'd love to see how many fellow animal lovers are with us today. Now, it's hard to reconcile that gentle image with the rebellious girl who defied her family to become a star. How did she go from being a pampered daughter of Mexican nobility to the woman who stared down the giants of cinema? Let's head back to Guadalajara, where the fire first started. To understand the fire in Katy's eyes, we have to go back to 1924, in the heart of Guadalajara, Mexico. But don't get it twisted, this wasn't a rags-to-riches story. Not even close. Katy was born into pure Mexican royalty. We're talking old money, the kind of wealth where her family once owned land that literally stretched across what is now the state of Texas. Her cousin was the president, for heaven's sake. But here's the tea. In that world of high society ballrooms and strict Catholic values, being an actress wasn't a career, it was a scandal. To her family, the stage was for those kinds of women. Her father, a man of iron will, made it crystal clear, Katy was to be a lady of the house, not a face on a screen. He even threatened to ship her off to a convent if she didn't kill her low-class dreams. Now, let's talk about a total rebel move that would make today's it girls look like choir girls. Minimovie, The Marriage Contract. Imagine this, it's 1939. Katy is only 15, drop-dead gorgeous, and she's just been spotted by the legendary director Emilio Fernandez. He hands her a contract that could change her life forever. But there's a massive catch, she's a minor. Her parents, they'd rather see her in a nun's habit than sign that paper. They flat out refused. So, what does this 15-year-old do? Does she cry? Does she give up? Absolutely not. In a move that was both genius and heartbreaking, Katy finds a loophole. She marries actor Victor Velasquez, a man much older than her, for one reason and one reason only, to gain the legal right to sign that contract herself. She literally sold her youth and entered a marriage without love just to get her foot in the studio door. Talk about a high-stakes gamble. Her first film, No Mataras, which literally means thou shalt not kill, was an instant hit. But while the world was falling in love with her talent, her family was disowning her. She had the fame, but she was officially an outcast in her own home. I mean, seriously, can you even imagine the gut-wrenching pain of being worshipped by millions across the globe, yet coming home to a family that treats you like a total stranger? It's wild, right? How do we feel about that kind of tough love from her parents? Was it really about protecting her, or was it just plain, cold control? So, I gotta ask, have you, or maybe a tough lady you know, ever had to basically cut ties with your whole world just to get a fair shot at the life you actually wanted? Let's settle this right now in the comments. Was Katy a total boss for risking it all, or did she go too far by turning her back on her own blood? If you're Team Katy and think she did what she had to do, drop a green heart. But if you think family should come first no matter what, drop a red heart. I'm dying to see where you guys stand on this one. Katy Jurado didn't just walk into the spotlight, she fought her way through a wall of gold and tradition. But the question is, was the freedom she bought with that wedding ring worth the price of her soul? Because as she headed toward the bright lights of Hollywood, she had no idea that she was walking straight into the arms of the most dangerous men in the world. Now, here is what the history books won't tell you. Katy Jurado didn't just walk into Hollywood, she stormed it. But make no mistake, my friends, the red carpet wasn't rolled out for her. She had to fight for every inch of that spotlight in a world that wasn't ready for a woman like her. Let's look past the studio lights for a second. It's 1951. Director Bud Boticher spots Katy at a bullfight in Mexico. He's mesmerized. He offers her a role in The Bullfighter and the Lady. But here's the catch, Katy spoke zero English. Absolutely none. In Hollywood, that's usually a one-way ticket back home. But imagine the audacity, Katy didn't back down. She didn't have time for language school, so she memorized her entire script phonetically. She memorized the sounds, the breaths, the rhythm of a language she didn't even understand. Can you fathom the sheer mental grit that took? On set, she was faking it with such elegance that no one realized she was essentially performing a linguistic miracle. The result? She didn't just survive, she stole the show. She proved right then and there that her talent was a universal language. By 1952, Hollywood knew her name, but they didn't know her power yet. Then came High Noon. Now, believe me, the industry was used to seeing Latin women as spitfires or nameless servants. But Katy, she refused to play the caricature. She transformed Helen Ramirez into a woman of dignity, mystery, and iron will. The payoff was historic. Katy Jurado became the first Latin woman ever to win a Golden Globe. Think about that for a moment. In an era of deep-seated prejudice, a woman from Guadalajara was standing on that stage, forcing the elite to look her in the eye and acknowledge her greatness. It was a total shock to the system, and Hollywood would never be the same again. The real test came in 1954 with Broken Lance. Katy was cast opposite the legendary Spencer Tracy. The critics were whispering, could a Mexican actress really hold her own against a titan like Tracy? Could she handle the heavy, emotional weight of a high-stakes drama? The reality? She didn't just hold her own, she was the heartbeat of the film. Katy delivered a performance so raw and so soulful that the Academy had no choice but to notice. She became the first Mexican actress to receive an Oscar nomination. My friends, this wasn't just a personal win, it was a cultural earthquake. She wasn't just a Mexican star anymore, she was a global icon. And with great fame came the studio's attempt to cage her. The big bosses wanted to sign her to long-term contracts, but they wanted her to stay in her lane. They wanted the accent, the temper, the stereotype. But Katy was a truth-teller before it was even a trend. She walked away from massive paychecks just to keep her dignity. She famously said she didn't come to Hollywood to be the spicy Mexican, she came to be an actress. By refusing to bow down, she paved a golden road for every Latin star who followed her. She was the blueprint. As the world cheered for this steel woman, a dark storm was brewing in her personal life. Because the more famous she became, the more she attracted the kind of men who wanted to break her spirit. And that is where the glamour ends and the nightmare begins. A soul-binding blood oath with Marlon Brando, a bone-chilling nightmare of abuse at the hands of Ernest Borgnine. My friends, are you truly ready to turn the darkest pages of Katy Jurado's diary? Brace yourselves, because the next part is about to force you to rethink everything you thought you knew about the glitter and gold of old Hollywood. Stop. Just stop for a second and look at her. We see the Golden Globe, the Oscar nomination, and that killer gaze that brought Hollywood to its knees. But make no mistake, my friends, that was all just smoke and mirrors. Behind that diamond-encrusted smile, there was a scream that Hollywood spent decades trying to silence. Now, let's get down to brass tacks. What if I told you that the legendary Katy Jurado wasn't just a star, but a prisoner in a gold-plated nightmare? Believe me, the truth is far more chilling than any script. It's 1960, on the set of One-Eyed Jacks. Imagine the atmosphere, thick with tension and raw talent. You've got Marlon Brando, the ultimate rebel, and Katy Jurado, the woman who refused to be conquered. Brando was absolutely obsessed. He proposed to her more times than anyone can count, but Katy, she knew better than to become just another trophy on his shelf. But here is what the history books won't tell you. They wanted a bond that went beyond legal papers. Something ancient. Something eternal. Can you even fathom the kind of intensity where, in a dark, silent room, you don't exchange rings, but you exchange life itself? They took a blade, sliced their wrists, and pressed them together until their blood mingled. A blood-brother pact. This wasn't a PR stunt, it was a soul-binding ritual that connected them until the day they died. It's wild to think about it today, isn't it? That kind of terrifying, mystical devotion? My friends, that was the only way two souls that haunted could ever feel truly connected. If Brando was her soulmate in blood, Ernest Borgnine was her living hell. In 1959, they were the it couple. But let's look past the studio lights for a second. Behind the doors of their lavish mansion, the reality was a straight-up horror movie. Ernest's jealousy was a sickness. I mean, how much can one soul actually take? Imagine being a world-class icon, yet living in constant fear. One night, the rage finally boiled over. Borgnine didn't just yell, he snapped. He wrapped his hands around Katy's throat and squeezed. He choked her until the world started to fade into blackness. Right there, in the middle of all that luxury. Can you imagine the sheer coldness in that betrayal? To be silenced by the very man who promised to protect you. When she finally walked away, the scars weren't just on her neck, they were on her soul. Her own son even threatened to kill Borgnine if he ever showed his face again. That's not just drama, that's the raw sound of a family being torn apart by violence. By 1968, the Steel Woman was starting to break. Make no mistake, the industry loved her beauty, but they didn't give a damn about her pain. The isolation, the abuse, the constant pressure to be perfect, it finally pushed her over the edge. Just imagine the absolute darkness of that night in Mexico City. Katy sat alone with a bottle of wine and a pen. She wrote a suicide note, a gut-wrenching scream in Spanish that no one was supposed to hear. And then, she swallowed 6 to 7 sleeping pills. 6 to 7. I mean, are we serious right now? That is beyond any human breaking point. She was ready to trade the fame for the ultimate silence. She made one final, desperate call to say goodbye, and it was a total miracle she survived. But the woman who woke up in that hospital bed, She was a hollow shell. The fire was gone, replaced by a cold, numbing reality. Now, you'd think life would finally show her some mercy, wouldn't you? But fate had one last, cruel twist. In 1981, Katy was trying to piece her life back together. Then, the phone rang in the middle of the night. It's the call every parent fears more than death itself. A car accident. Her eldest son, Victor Hugo, was gone. Look at the pictures of her from those years. Tell me, what do you see? Because I see a woman who had finally been defeated. This wasn't just grief, it was a total mental collapse. She turned to the bottle to drown out the silence of an empty house. She vanished from the spotlight, hiding like a ghost in Cuernavaca. The legendary Katy Jurado was essentially buried alive by her own heartbreak. I have to ask, how do we even process this much tragedy in one lifetime? Is this the real price of the American dream for a woman of color? Or was Katy just too real for a world that preferred its stars to be made of plastic? Drop a comment below. Does this change how you feel when you see her on screen? Because I'm telling you, those tough characters she played, they weren't just roles. That was her real life bleeding through. The loss of her child, the nightmare of abuse, and a soul-binding blood oath that haunted her to the very end. Katy Jurado didn't just step away, she retreated into the shadows. But my friends, here is the real question. Could that massive fortune from her golden years actually buy her a single moment of peace? Or did it all just vanish under the weight of her tragedies? The answer is going to leave you absolutely stunned in the next part. We've talked about the blood, the tears, and the killer gaze. But what did all that translate to in the real world? In Hollywood, they say fame is a currency, but for Katy Jurado, that currency had a very high exchange rate, and she paid it in full. Imagine the money flowing in during the 50s. We're talking about a woman who owned her own production company and lived in mansions that would make modern influencers blush. But let's look past the studio lights for a second. Between a financial slaughter of a divorce from Ernest Borgnine and the mountain of medical bills for her battle with depression and heart disease, the gold started to lose its luster. The reality? When the dust settled, her net worth at the time of her passing, adjusted for our world in 2025, was estimated at around $5 to $7 million. Now, for some, that sounds like a fortune. But for a woman who was the first to break every glass ceiling in Hollywood, it's a gut punch. It shows us that while she was rich in talent, her bank account was constantly being drained by the very tragedies we just talked about. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is it really wealth if it's constantly being spent on surviving your own life? Now, let's talk about her final act. Katy didn't end up in a nursing home or a crowded hospital wing. She retreated to her fortress in Cuernavaca, the city of eternal spring. But this wasn't a peaceful retirement, it was a standoff with her own body. Imagine the sheer coldness of those final days. The steel woman was struggling with kidney failure and a heart that was simply tired of breaking. But here is what the history books won't tell you. She refused to let the world see her weak. She shut the gates. She didn't want the pity of an industry that had already taken so much. When she passed in 2002, the house was silent. There were no flashing cameras, just a few loyal souls and the memories of a queen. She died with her dignity intact, but she died in a silence that was almost deafening. Fast forward to 2025. You'd think a star from the 1950s would be a fading memory, right? Wrong. Make no mistake, Katy Jurado is having a major moment right now. 2024 was her 100th anniversary, and thanks to AI restoration and social media, her killer gaze has gone viral. It's wild to think that Gen Z is discovering her on TikTok as the ultimate girl boss of old Hollywood. Her clips are being shared millions of times because, in a world of filtered perfection, Katy's raw power feels like a breath of fresh air. There are even rumors of a major new documentary in the works for late 2025. But here's the messy part. With this new fame comes the vultures. Corporate entities are fighting over her image rights, trying to turn her legacy into a brand. It's the same old Hollywood story, just with new technology. And that brings us to the estate. After her son Victor Hugo passed, the weight of the legacy fell to her daughter, Sandra. But behind the scenes, there's been a quiet, heartbreaking battle. Believe me, the truth is messy. There have been reports of legendary artifacts, including parts of her award collection, going missing or being caught in legal limbo. There were even whispers of her Golden Globe appearing in a private auction. The family is fighting tooth and nail in 2025 to keep her soul from being sold to the highest bidder. It's a reminder that even after you're gone, the fight to protect your name never really ends. Now, look at where she started and where she ended. Was the fame worth the isolation? Was the $7 million worth the 67 pills? I want you to think about this. If you were in her shoes, would you have chosen the crown, knowing it was made of thorns? Drop a yellow heart if you think her legacy is priceless regardless of the money, or a grey heart if you feel Hollywood simply didn't pay her what she was truly worth. I'll be waiting to hear your thoughts. So, after the millions have been counted and the phantoms of her past have been laid to rest, what is the one thing Hollywood can never take away from Katy Jurado? It's time to look at the final piece of the puzzle, a legacy that is currently exploding in ways she never could have imagined. The final word on Katy Jurado isn't a goodbye, it's a revolution. Stick around for the grand finale. Katy Jurado didn't just open doors, she kicked them down so hard they could never be closed again. She was the very blueprint for every Latin woman who dared to dream in a language that wasn't her own. Think about the stars we love today: Salma Hayek, Penelope Cruz, Sofia Vergara. That world where they are celebrated, instead of being forced into the background. That exists because Katy stood her ground. She was a truth-teller in an era of lies. Every time she refused a role that lacked dignity, she was buying freedom for the actresses of the future. Her legacy isn't just a star on the Walk of Fame, it's the very existence of Latin power in modern cinema. Hollywood is only just beginning to understand the debt they owe her. We talked about that $5 to $7 million net worth. In a world obsessed with billionaires, that might seem small. But that figure tells a story that money alone can't capture. Katy prioritized living real over hoarding gold. She spent her fortune protecting her family, fighting her battles, and maintaining her pride in a city that tried to break her. That money wasn't just a balance sheet, it was her shield. She died knowing she never sold her soul for a paycheck, a kind of wealth most of Hollywood will never understand. And here we are in 2026. It's wild to think that decades after her final breath, she is more relevant than ever. Between the AI restorations and the viral tributes, Katy has become a symbol of resilience for a whole new generation. They see the strength in those eyes, and they recognize a warrior. As the new documentary nears its release, the world is finally ready to hear the raw, unpolished truth of her journey. Katy Jurado once said, "True glory isn't about never falling, it's about how you rise after every blow fate deals you." She lived every word of it. She survived the abuse, the heartbreak, and the silence, only to emerge as an immortal icon. She teaches us that your scars aren't something to hide, they are your medals of honor. As you look back at the incredible life of this steel woman, what is the one thing you'll remember most? Is it that piercing gaze, her courage to love Marlon Brando in blood, or her strength to walk away from the darkness? Perhaps you have a story of a woman in your own life who stood tall when the world tried to push her down. I'd be honored to read your memories in the comments. Let's turn this space into a tribute to the resilient women who paved the way for us all. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Until next time, keep looking for the truth behind the glamour.